So, what if I told you that the money you have sitting in your bank account is actually on a pretty incredible journey? A journey that's, well, it's reshaping our entire national economy. Today, we're going to follow that money. We're going to uncover a story about immense wealth, huge ambitions, and, as you'll see, some very different realities.
Think about it. You work hard, you save up, and you put your money in a bank. Seems simple enough, right? For safekeeping. But what happens next? After you've made that deposit, where does your money actually go? What is it being used for? That's the big question we're really digging into today.
And to really get a handle on this, you have to look at this number, 200 lakh crore rupees. I mean, just let that sink in. According to Reserve Bank data, that's the total amount of our money being held in Indian banks. To put that in perspective, that single number is bigger than the entire economy of many developed countries. It's a truly mind-boggling amount of cash.
Okay, but here's where it gets really, really interesting. Who actually owns all this capital? Well, the analysis we're looking at claims that the top 10% of depositors, they own almost all of it, which means the other 90% of the population, most of the country, collectively holds just a tiny slice of it, something like 18 lakh crore. So you've got this absolutely massive pool of capital just sitting in the banks. The big question is, how is it being put to work? The source material we're drawing from points to two major government policies that it says are designed to get this money moving.
On one side, you have the National Monetization Plan. Now think of this like private companies getting the keys to run public assets. We're talking highways, airports, you name it, and run them for a profit. And on the other side, a privatization plan, which is where those public assets are sold off completely. So, two really powerful strategies, and both of them need a whole lot of funding.
And just how much funding are we talking about? Well, the combined target for these two plans by 2030 is a massive 16 lakh crore rupees. And that, of course, raises a pretty critical question. Where on earth does the money to fund these incredibly ambitious projects actually come from? Well, the analysis we're looking at describes a system where our money, the money sitting in public banks, is allegedly directed to fund these exact projects. The picture it paints is one where government ministries are connecting with large corporations, and then the banks are told to provide the capital for their ventures. All right, so that's the blueprint that the source describes. Now let's do the interesting part. Let's actually follow that money trail and see where the analysis says it's going.
The journey it outlines is actually pretty straightforward. Really, just 3 steps. It all starts with public money in banks and financial institutions like LIC. That money is then funneled through investments and loans. And its final destination? Some of the country's largest corporate houses.
And this is where we see some of hard numbers that are cited. You can see these massive investments flowing from public institutions straight into major corporations. We're talking about the State Bank of India's investment in Reliance, or LIC's exposure in both Reliance and the Adani Group. It adds up to lakhs and lakhs of crores. And according to this analysis, this huge flow of domestic public money is the main thing fueling the stock market's record-breaking rally, pushing the Sensex up towards 86,000. And what's really notable is the argument that this is happening with less reliance on foreign investment than we've seen in the past. It's our own money doing the heavy lifting. But, and this is a big but, while the stock market is hitting these incredible new heights, the source material suggests a completely different story is playing out on the ground. It paints a picture of two economies that are moving in opposite directions. So let's start with the official perspective. The argument here is really clear. If a country wants to be a major power on the world stage, it has to have a significant industrial base. It's not a choice, it's a necessity. So building up these large-scale industries is framed as a top economic priority for the nation's growth. The source, however, contrasts that vision with this number, 10,700. What is that? Well, that's the reported number of other industrial companies that have filed for bankruptcy because they couldn't repay their loans. Now let's bring this down to the direct financial impact on all of us. Let's just take toll revenue from highways, for example. Back in 2014, it was around 14,000 crore rupees. Today, the source claims it has surged to over 75,000 crore. That's a more than 5-fold increase in what people are paying just to use the roads. And it is definitely not just tolls. The source points out that while corporate wealth is growing, the cost of living for the average person has gone up sharply. The cost of things farmers need just to grow our food has reportedly tripled. And higher education fees, they've jumped by an average of 85%. And all of this is happening while incomes look like this. The source cites an average monthly income for all workers at around 17,000 rupees. But when you look closer, that number is about 8,000 for farmers, and it drops all the way down to just 4,000 for laborers. So you put all this together and you get to the crucial question. How do we interpret this entire economic picture? Is what we're seeing a sustainable boom that's fueling national progress? Or is it something a lot more fragile?
This slide, I think, makes a really striking comparison based on the source's data. It claims that private sector earnings in essential areas like education and health are now just dwarfing the entire government budget for those same public services. We're talking 9 times larger in education and an incredible 27 times larger in health.
And just to help frame that final question, it's probably worth taking a second to remember the classic definition of an economic bubble. It's when market prices are being driven more by the flow of money and speculation and less by the actual fundamental value of what's being produced. And that brings us to the central dilemma that this analysis leaves us with. Is this economic model a powerful new engine for growth, one that's creating national champions and world-class infrastructure? Or is it a fragile bubble, built on a foundation of public money that risks leaving a lot of the population behind? It's a question that gets right to the very heart of what an economy is for, and that's where we'll leave it for you to think about.